the road to net zero is proving to be quite difficult because we are also seeing climate trailblazers like the UK rolling back on their climate goals. What does that tell you about the reality of energy?
It tells me that some people are being swayed by money and that they're not following through on some of the promises because of pressure of shareholders, pressure of external elements, and it's a problem. We can't go backwards. We cannot allow the Paris Agreement to be walked backwards.
But there are worries that the momentum could change after 2024 elections.
Nobody can I don't believe any politician can stop what is happening now. This transition is much bigger than any one party in a country or one, it's not going to happen. People are moving because the science is telling us we have to move in this direction. It's not political. It's not ideological. It's about the air people breathe. It's about pollution going up into the air, about the impact on countries of their farming, of their living conditions, of children, of disease. Those things should motivate everybody to be helping to make this transition happen.
If you want a perfect example of how insane is the UN's net zero pipe dream, look no further than this bill, the Environment Protection Sea Dumping Amendment, using new technologies to fight climate change, in brackets. We're going to spend billions on pulling a natural trace gas out of the air and then spend billions more to try and inject it under the seabed and hope it stays there. Science and nature show that it cannot. The fake environmentalists have decided the best way to protect the environment is to dump stuff in the sea, just like the koalas being euthanized to make way for wind turbines, or damaged solar panels leaking toxic heavy metals into waterways. The United Nations net zero plan again involves killing the environment to save it. Carbon capture and storage can be summarised by the following steps. Carbon dioxide, a harmless, colourless, odourless, tasteless, natural trace atmospheric gas that is generated from the burning of materials containing carbon atoms, including digesting food in animal guts, including our own guts, and burning coal in power stations to produce among the cheapest forms of electricity available for human progress. In the case of carbon capture and sequestration or storage, carbon dioxide is captured at the point of production. Carbon dioxide is transported then via ship and or pipeline to a storage location. The carbon dioxide, wait for it, is injected underneath the seabed via drilling for storage, theoretically permanently. It's worth remembering that carbon dioxide makes up just 0.04% of the Earth's atmosphere. Human beings are responsible for just 3% of the annual production of carbon dioxide, and Australia contributes just 1.3% of that 3%. Yet the net zero advocates tell us that if we take a fraction of our carbon dioxide and pay an oil drilling company to dump it in the ocean by injecting it under the seabed, we can save the world. Wow, amazing. Obviously, it's a bloody lie, an absurd lie. Carbon capture and storage is just another scheme designed to make some multinational companies rich at the expense of Australians. And you lot are falling for it, while adding huge costs to power bills that will needlessly continue increasing and killing standards of living and raising costs of living. Needlessly. That's what gets on my goat. You're doing it willfully. Australia must ditch the United Nations World Economic Forum net zero pipe dream and all of its insane requirements.
Agriculture contributes about 33% of all the emissions of the world, depending a little bit on how you count it, but it's anywhere from 26 to 33. And we can't get to net zero. We don't get this job done unless agriculture is front and center as part of the solution. But with a growing population on the planet, we just crossed the threshold of 8 billion fellow citizens around the world. We just crossed that in this last year. Emissions from the food system alone are projected to cause another 0.5 degree of warming by mid-century on the current course that we are today. A 2-degree future could result in an additional 600 million people not getting enough to eat. And you just can't continue to both warm the planet while also expecting to feed it. Doesn't work. So we have to reduce emissions from the food system to keep the 1.5 degrees alive. Why do we have to keep 1.5 degrees alive? Because scientists, as a basis of physics and mathematics, not ideology and politics or party labels or anything else, as a matter of physics and mathematics and some biology and chemistry, have told us these are the consequences. And we already see it happening. And almost everything they've predicted for 30 plus years now is coming true, but the problem is it's coming true faster and bigger than was in fact predicted.
Zakon o obnovi prirode. Kako to lijepo zvuči, tko se ne bi složio s time? Međutim, prava istina je da je ovdje riječ o samo još jednom ogromnom idiotizmu kakvog smo u ovom domu vidjeli već bezbroj puta. Jedini pravi cilj ovog zakona je konfiskacija privatnog vlasništva i oduzimanje poljoprivrednog zemljišta poljoprivrednicima, što ima krajnji cilj, a to je nedostupnost organske hrane građanima. Znači, želi se onemogućiti prosječnom građaninu da može jesti normalnu hranu. To je zakon, bi bilo bolje da se zove Zakon o nedostupnosti hrane građanima Europske unije. Nekada u komunizmu bilo je barem malo dostojanstva, pa su se zakoni o konfiskaciji privatnog vlasništva nazivali Zakonom o konfiskaciji. Sada ih nazivate Zakonom o obnovi planete Zemlje, obnovi prirode. Pa to su gluposti i idiotarije. Hvala.
There is an awful lot of well-known people who appear to have credentials saying that we are in a climate emergency, which we are, aren't we?
No, we are not in a climate emergency. These people want us to think that the world began in 1850 when we started using fossil fuels. But for 150 years before that, it was also warming. There is zero evidence that the CO2 increase in the atmosphere is the cause of rising temperature. None whatsoever, because it was already rising. And as I was about to say, during the first 150 years of rising out of 1700, there was a period of over 40 years where the temperature increased more and faster than it has done since 1850, especially since 1950, when we were actually starting to put a significant amount more CO2 in the atmosphere post-war. And today, it's exponential. There's a wonderful graph, it's in my book, which shows the temperature record in central England from 1660 or so, when the first thermometer existed. So this is the longest thermometer record of temperature in the world, because they were invented in England. And so that shows a very steady, continuous rise in temperature of a little over 1 degree Celsius in 320 years. It's not a big deal. They keep saying it's never gone this fast. It's never risen this fast. That is a lie. It has risen this fast many times in the even recent past, especially from about 1690 to about 1730. It rose faster and longer than it ever has done since. It's all in the record.
Sea ice, which is melting at a rate that the Arctic Ocean now increasingly is exposed. In 5 years, scientists predict we will have the first ice-free Arctic summer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Litterman, how long have you been studying climate change and possible solutions?
Studying, well, you know, I was the head of risk management at Goldman Sachs. I didn't worry too much about climate change at that time.
If you would, Doctor.
How many years? Let's say 15.
All right, how about you, Dr. Holtz-Eakin?
About 25.
Okay. Dr. Litterman, how much will it cost to make the United States of America carbon neutral by 2050?
I don't know, sir.
So you're advocating we do these things, but you don't know the ultimate cost?
Yes, absolutely. I certainly don't know the ultimate cost, and it's very uncertain. It depends on innovations. It depends on.
I understand. I'm just trying to lay a foundation here to understand your expert testimony. Dr. Holtz-Eakin, do you know how much it will cost to make the United States of America carbon neutral by 2050?
Depends how you do it. If we do it all in the federal budget with directed things, it'll be
public
super
and private
expensive.
Dollars.
Sorry?
Public and private dollars. It's ultimately private dollars anyway.
Yeah, I agree.
So how much?
You're going to look at $50 trillion.
$50 trillion. Yeah. Okay, thank you. If we make the United States of America carbon neutral by 2050 by spending $50 trillion, which you're advocating, I gather.
No.
Okay. Then strike that last part. I'm wrong. You're not advocating. You're advocating something.
If you're going to do something, do something smart. That's what I advocated.
Okay. If we spend $50 trillion to make the United States of America carbon neutral by 2050, how much will that lower world temperatures?
I can't answer that because we don't know what China and India and the rest of the globe has done.
Okay. Have you heard anybody from the Biden administration say how much it will lower world temperatures?
No.
Does anybody know how much it will lower world temperatures? No?
No one can know for sure.
Okay. Dr. Litterman.
Yes.
If we spend $50 trillion, or however much it takes, to make the United States carbon neutral by 2050, how much will it lower world temperatures?
Senator, that depends on the rest of the world. We have to work with the rest of the world. We're in this together. Well, it's one world. We can't build a wall around the United States and say...
What if we spend $50 trillion, Europe cooperates, most Western democracies cooperate, but India and China don't? How much will our $50 trillion lower world temperature?
We're in this together, Senator. We have to get the world to work together.
How much? I get that.
Okay.
How much will it lower world temperatures?
If China and India do not help.
Yes.
I don't know.
You know, something that I've seen you discuss before are some of the major lies of the green movement and just how easy it is to debunk those. So can you walk us through a few of those that you think are some of the most important talking points that really expose the fallacy of the entire green movement?
Well, they're arguing that human emissions of carbon dioxide drive global warming. There's just one slight problem with that. No one has ever proven that human emissions of carbon dioxide drive global warming. It's never been shown. And I have asked many scientists, including a former chief scientist of this country, just give me half a dozen scientific papers that prove that human emissions of carbon dioxide drive global warming. It can't be done, and it hasn't been done. Now, horror of all horrors, assume that I'm wrong. Assume that you can prove that human emissions of carbon dioxide drive global warming. Then you also have to prove that the natural emissions, which are 97% of the total emissions, you also have to prove that the natural emissions don't drive global warming. So before the whole game starts, it's nonsense. The whole science that the human-induced global warming is based on is actually wrong. It's demonstrably wrong. My knowledge and experience is of past environments, going back to the beginning of time and looking at the past environments on planet Earth. In the past, we've had 6 great ice ages. 6 out of these 6 ice ages started when we had far more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere than now. So how can carbon dioxide drive global warming? And past atmospheres had up to 20% carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. At present, we have 0.04% carbon dioxide. A very, very small amount of a trace gas is in the atmosphere. So we're being asked to believe that and I use the word believe advisedly because that's a word of religion and politics. It's not a word of science. We're being asked to believe that traces of an emission of a trace gas into the atmosphere will change a whole planetary system. And this is contrary to everything we know from the past.
Isn't it true you have a science degree from Yale? What's that?
Bachelor of Arts degree.
Is it a political science degree?
Yes, political science.
So how do you get a Bachelor of Arts in a science?
Well, it's liberal arts education and degree. It's a bachelor.
Okay, so it's not really science. So I think it's somewhat appropriate that somebody with a pseudoscience degree is here pushing pseudoscience in front of our committee today. Let's get back to the science of it.
But it's not science. You're not quoting science.
Well, you're the science expert. You got the political science degree. Look, let me ask you this. What's the consensus on parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere?
About 406 today.
Okay, 406. Are you aware
350 being the level that scientists have said is danger.
Okay, are you aware? 350 is dangerous. Wow. Are you aware that since mammals have walked the planet, the average has been over 1,000 parts per million?
Yeah, but we weren't walking the planet. Let me just share with you that we now know that definitively at no point during the past 800,000 years has atmospheric CO2 been as high as it is today.
The reason you chose 800,000 years ago is because for 200 million years before that, it was greater than it is today. And I'm going to submit for the record.
Yeah, but there weren't human beings. I mean, there was a different world, folks. We didn't have 7 billion people.
So how did it get to 2,000 parts per million if we humans weren't here?
Because there were all kinds of geologic events happening on Earth which spewed up.
Did geology stop when we got on the planet?
Mr. Chairman, this is just not a serious conversation.
Your testimony is not serious. I agree.
Dear colleagues, when the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change is using hysterical, spoiled people like Greta Thunberg, whose place should be in school, not on streets, to promote these reports, clearly we are dealing with a belief system and cult rather than a scientifically based organization. Carbon dioxide is a gas that currently represents 0.041% of the whole atmosphere. Despite this small percent, for decades now, campaigns are run to make people believe that man-made CO2 is the cause of the climate change. The solution proposed to fight climate change are higher taxes and more state control, as well as less rights and options for the people. Emissions must have a price that changes our behavior. This is what Ursula von der Leyen said in this plenary in 2019. Obviously, the declared objective is to change our behavior through higher taxes and prices, while fighting climate change is just a pretext to do it. People deserve a better future, but we clearly cannot achieve that by passing laws that are making them poorer, while a small elite is getting richer by selling and forcibly selling them products and services that they do not need or want, but are allegedly saving the planet. Thank you.
Mr. Terhes, you have a blue card from Mr. Kokalis. Do you accept it?
Get on.
Okay. Mr. Kokalis, you have the floor for 30 seconds.
Thank you, colleague, for accepting the blue card. I would like to ask you to explain a little bit what do you mean, what is the relationship of Greta Thunberg to the IPCC? Do you think that she's a scientist? She's part of the scientific process of the IPCC? And I would not comment on your characterization of her as a hysterical person. And I also think that she has grown beyond school age by now. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question. And I'm glad that you asked this, because it is surprising that when we talk about an important topic like this, like climate change, in the media, for example, and even in this plenary, people like Greta Thunberg are more quoted than actual experts. So I'm asking you in reply, what is the expertise of Greta Thunberg, of Bill Gates, for example, to lecture us, to force us, to lobby us, to pass laws, to violate people's rights, and for them to make money? No, you answer exactly what I asked. Because if these are scientists, look, science is based on facts, not on propaganda. And everything that we heard here So everything that we heard here, it's simply propaganda.
Thank you very much, Mr. Terkes.
You have to explain to the Europeans
Mr. Terkes,
why a gas
you don't have the floor, please.
0.041% of the atmosphere is causing all these catastrophes they are claiming.
Mr. Terkes.
Of course we have to protect the planet. That's what feeds us. But we also have to keep ourselves alive. And people don't understand how short a time it takes for you not to have any food before you disappear from this life. Because nobody's experienced it much in recent years. But we're now facing a situation where a huge number of very powerful organizations and elites at an international and at national levels are calling for policies that are basically a suicide pact, basically a death wish of some sort. And it's true, they might not want to say it out loud, but there's a lot of people who think there's too many people. And I think that's ridiculous myself. We're quite well off now than we were before. Mm-hmm. Just 20 years ago, we're better off now with the technology and the knowledge, the science we have.
Dr. Moore, you're saying these organizations or these corporations. Who are you referring to? You're talking about the World Economic Forum? Who are you referring to?
Well, let's start there, yes.
Okay. So you probably have some choice words for Klaus Schwab, I assume?
Yeah, the guy who said we'll own nothing and be happy.
Yeah.
Can you put up his picture so people know what he looks like? He's a sweetheart. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's a sad situation that we have come to. I didn't realize it could possibly ever get this serious as I've gone through like 45, 50 years of evolution with this train of thought. And when climate change first came up as an issue, I realized that we were being duped, and it was all about money. 80% of all the science research in the United States is in universities. They have basically become money-milling machines getting government grants to tell the politicians what they want. Mm-hmm. What the politicians want is stories that make people afraid. And the scientists are the silent part of it in a way, because nobody sees the money going from the politicians to the scientists. It goes through bureaucrats at state, city, national, international levels. And that money is meant to create narratives that will scare people, and that makes them easier to control. It's as simple as that.
Well, greetings to you. A number of people have asked me if I can supply any information that would help them do their own research when it comes to the great climate emergency. Is there really an emergency? Is there not an emergency? Is the whole damn thing a hoax? What the hell's going on? Now, I've never met anybody at all who doesn't accept that climate is changing, and indeed that climate has always changed since the beginning of time. And I think science proves that fairly comprehensively. Where the debate lies, or there would be a debate if a debate were allowed, is what is causing it, how long would it last, and how dangerous for the planet is it? There are literally thousands of independent scientists, and I use the word independent advisedly, independent scientists who don't believe there's a climate emergency. They accept there is climate change, but they don't believe that it's an emergency, and certainly not worth curtailing our freedoms and deindustrializing our countries to try and do anything about it, i.e. Net zero. Now, all these books which I list, excuse me, all these books I have listed, and this is only the tip of the iceberg, are from independent scientists who say there is no climate emergency, all right? There are thousands more. Now, you will never find these people on your TV screen. They will not be allowed on your TV screen because your TV screens are controlled totally by the World Economic Forum. And here's your problem. You don't have access, or it's difficult to get, more difficult to get access to true information and independent fact. So you have to dig down for yourself. You cannot rely on your TV screens. You cannot rely on the likes of Chris Packham or fake pseudoscientists, teenagers from Sweden, or even the King of England, who certainly isn't, I don't quite know what he is, he's certainly not a scientist. Anyway, this is the point. You're being fed rubbish all the time, and it's simply to control you, so that they can bring in the WEF reset, build back better, and all the sort of nonsense, but it's designed to curtail your freedom if you're an ordinary individual citizen. If you're the ordinary Joe, it's designed to control you. They're not giving up their aeroplanes, their private jets, their great estates, their castles, their mansions. They mean you. They mean you. You have to give it all up. You have to give up your modest holiday in bloody Alicante or whatever it is. So I've listed all the books, how to get them and all the rest of it. But you have to do some homework yourself. You have to be able to take on your children's school teachers who are purveying this ludicrous nonsense. You have to go down on Parents' Day and say, why are you teaching my children this nonsense? And of course my website, which is now one of the biggest independent climate information websites in the country. And you'll find all the charts you need, you'll find everything you need, all the details you'll need on my website, as well as these very helpful books by independent scientists. You have to take these people on before you're locked in your 15-minute city and you wonder how the hell it happened. And it happened because you were dozing all the way through it.